Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. We're on Podbean, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. We're also on Dash Radio on their Nothing But Net channel every single weeknight at 7 p.m. Also, check out Five Reasons YouTube before Floor, an hour before every game. Post up 5R as soon as the game ends. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get all of our content during the week. We got a new Formula One show that's going on tonight. Hitting the apex, as well as our Kane show. So you can see how diverse the channel is. Also, 5reasonsports.com. Make sure you spell that out for the latest takeaways from Brady Hawk, who will be on with us tonight, and others. We do not have a paywall. And check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We mention our product code all the time. It's 5RSN. That's the number 5RSN, and that gets you discounts on great products. The two I'm mentioning tonight, therapistpreferred.com. All your premium CBD, whether it's the sports cream, the gummies, or the tincture, 25% off at therapistpreferred.com. Or if you're looking for help as an endurance athlete, or simply if you sweat, go to getsalis.com. That's GETSALIS.com. Get the little packets. It's much better than Gatorade or Powerade, and replace your electrolytes in a healthy way. So it's getsalis.com, therapistpreferred.com. Use that code 5RSN. And now, tonight's episode.
Yeah. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust, it's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on 5 on the Floor. Here's tonight's floor plan. I got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. I got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305, new member of the 10,000 Club on Twitter. Congratulations to Brady for that. Now we got to get Tropical up there, but he's actually got to change it to his real name, and he's never going to do that. So it is what it is. Anyway, let's get to the elephant in the room tonight, because I've actually gotten some messages from people who say we're avoiding this topic on purpose. We're not. We really aren't. We've been kind of trying to cover as many things as we can as we head towards the stretch of the season. We haven't really isolated on Jimmy Butler a whole bunch. And one of the reasons we hadn't was he hadn't played a whole bunch for a little while. Now he's back. He rolled his ankle again. I know that some people say it's got to be the shoes. That's 5 times, I guess, that he's had some kind of an ankle injury since you switched to Li Ning. So that's another conversation. I don't know how real that is or not. But he's missed some time, and he had some struggles down the stretch of some games. And I don't think this is a bad thing for this team, and especially not for me in terms of my prognostication powers. He's about to fall behind Tyler Herro for leading scorer of the team. He's now only 0.1 ahead of Tyler, and most likely with the way things are trending, he's going to be behind Tyler, probably as the second leading scorer on this team. I think before the year, if that had happened, that would be a very good thing. In fact, I said it at the time, although I think we all agreed that Bam being the leading scorer would probably be the best thing, but Tyler being the leading scorer would show that he had growth. But I'm going to get to, I know, Greg, you got a lot of thoughts on this, and I want Brady to get to some of the specifics, but I just want to I'm holding Greg back here. I'm holding Greg back because I know he's got thoughts. Okay. But I just want to be clear on one thing before I get to it. And then we'll get into these like more detailed shooting stats that John Jablanca and others posted. Okay. Per 36 minutes this season, just to be clear, and he's played 48 games. This was after playing 58 and 52 in the first 2 seasons with Miami. And this is non-playoffs. He's averaging 22.6 points. That's after 21, 3, and 23. Okay, this is per 36 minutes. He's averaging 6.4 rebounds. It's down slightly from 7-1 and 7-4. He's averaging 6 assists, down slightly from 6-4 and 7-6. His steals are the same. His blocks are the same. His turnovers are the same. His three-point percentage is somehow dipped to even worse, down to 19%. He's shooting 47% from the field after being 46% and 50% his first 2 seasons. So kind of right in the middle. Looking at all that, you say he's pretty much the same player that he's been. I mean, accounting for some role changes and stuff like that. Your view on how he's played this season, Greg?
Oh, I get to go first. This is amazing. Yes, I love this. Okay, so I think that we can acknowledge a couple things. Like, we don't have to be naive about this. Jimmy Butler's in the midst of a shooting slump. And to me, as I watch him play, he is trying to rely more on his post game than maybe I've ever seen him. And I feel like he is almost trying to like force the ball into the basket to break himself out of this shooting slump. I'm doing air quotes when I say slump because it's all relative because of the defensive stuff he brings. I start to get tired of this over analyzing, overthinking. I guess where I'm going is the season's too damn long, obviously, because like for us to start nitpicking, I know that Jimmy's been not as great, maybe statistically, as past seasons. And right now he's in a shooting slump. So, recency bias tells us to be bothered, but I don't know, like there's just an element of this where I feel like he has more help than he's ever had. It's a good thing that you're seeing young players ascend around him. And they're surviving stretches with Jimmy not playing that great, and they're still atop the conference. So at some point, like you're bothered because you're botherable. And I don't know how else to go with it. I tend to lean in the direction of trusting this guy. We've seen him have little slumps, peaks and valleys in other seasons. His first season in Miami in particular. I think that he had a post All-Star break stretch that wasn't so hot, and he still turned it around. So I just have a tendency to want to trust the guy. And I think that it's just, there's a divide right now where you have fans that are getting a little fickle, in my opinion.
Brady, I'm going to make you rank these. Okay. Cause these are the four things I hear about with Jimmy that are perceived as issues. And I'm not downplaying any of them. I just want to rank them. One is missed games. Okay. 2 is play down the stretch. 3 is struggles against bigger teams or longer teams. Okay. And 4 is his shooting overall. Rank those. What is the biggest of the 4 concerns?
I'd say the least is the missed games. Like, to be honest, I'm really not worried about that as much as maybe other people are. I just feel like it is not the worst thing in the world, as we've seen maybe in the bubble, especially with time off, what can do for you, or what time when you're constantly playing, what it can do for you, as we saw last season against the Bucks, where it all kind of came down to that. If I'm going to go backwards here, I'd say 3rd maybe is the length dealing with, because I just feel like maybe it's gone to a little bit too much. Like, I know I talk about it a ton because we're talking about it in terms of Jimmy Butler. Like, we're not talking about it. It bothers Jimmy Butler in terms of everything else he can do, because he's pretty dominant against smaller guys. We've seen his ability get to the line, get to the, on drives. Length just does bother him, but I think there's definitely ways to get about it. Second, I'd probably say, is the shooting. And to be honest, because I just feel like there's so many other elements to his game that I'm not totally worried about it. I know the numbers could jump out, or certain games, if they're blocking off the rim, is kind of ties into the length. That's why I'm kind of putting it 2 and 3, because I feel like these 2 things tie in together, because when you don't have the shooting and there's also length, those 2 things kind of go hand in hand. If I'm going to say number 1, I feel like it is the late game scoring, the late game offense, because it's also him kind of handing the keys off in a lot of ways. Like, it's also him trying to create and find different ways to score, try and find different plays that Spoelstra wants to get him into. But it's also like, with the way Tyler Herro's been playing, with the matchups that Bam Adebayo can get from night to night with these bigs in this league, with the amount of speed he has on all of them, it's just so much of just giving the keys to these other guys to kind of make a play, that if I'm going to rank them, it would probably be that worrisome. But honestly, I'm with Greg on a lot of what he was just saying. Like, it feels like the post-up stuff, it feels like it is, like, specifically last night, we're looking at that first half. What was it? Ended up being 2 of 9 shooting. That was nothing to do with the ankle. Like, that'll happen before that point. It was just a lot of forcing inside the lane when he couldn't get the post up. Basically, their whole offense in that game was whoever Corey Joseph was guarding, they're going to spam a post up, either Bam or Jimmy. So it just felt like it is a lot of that type of spamming. And when it doesn't work, and when it's not working around the rim for Jimmy, like I just said, it just ties into the shooting struggles.
Well, he's had 2 really bad games. Okay. Milwaukee and Charlotte. Like, those were, I mean, you can't, I mean,
I was at one of them. Ugh.
Yeah. I mean, he's had 2 really bad games. Okay. And he had some bad games the past couple of years, but not as many. By the way, he's on pace still to have more triple doubles this year than he's had in his previous 2 Heat seasons. I mentioned the 3-point shooting has gotten worse, but it's not considerably worse than it was before. I think defensively, he's every bit where he was. I don't think this is a defensive conversation. I do think, Brady, ranking the late game struggles is, number 1, is sort of interesting, because they seem to have an answer for that now. Like, I mean, if you go through, like, what do they have an answer for? Okay. So him missing time, they've found some answers in the regular season. They've played well without him this year, which they have not previously, mostly because Caleb Martin has been an answer, right? The shooting problems, they've worked around that for 2 years. Okay. That's so it's not ideal to have your two best players who are not plus shooters and sometimes not willing shooters, but they've worked around it. Okay. You look at the struggles with length. I feel like that's isolated to a few specific teams, Boston, Toronto, Cleveland, maybe. I don't know how many of those teams they're going to see in the postseason. So I don't know. Against Philadelphia, Chicago, he tends to play well. Milwaukee, of course, is the one that gives him the most trouble, but he has over the course of his career. So that is somewhat problematic. And maybe that is the number one, because to me, the late game stuff, they have solutions. He's just got to be willing, as you said, to give up the keys. I mean, their solution is Tyler Herro. I think that's where we're at. Right? I mean, we're almost 70 games into the season. The leap is happening. Okay. And I mean, he's a guy who's averaging 25 points a game on plus 50% shooting, since the All-Star break. Is this blasphemous to say? He's the guy late. I mean, he's the guy. I mean, he doesn't have to always be the guy, but he's the primary guy, particularly because the point guard doesn't want to shoot. Okay. So it's Tyler. So, I mean, Greg, when you look at it that way, they have an answer for that. I think it's the length that may become a bigger answer. It's a bigger problem against a team like Milwaukee.
Yeah, because it's matchup specific, and we've seen the struggles against Milwaukee, and Milwaukee's the defending champs. So I get all that, but you're delivering good news about Tyler Herro. I don't know. I guess it's just perception is everything, right? Because to me, I expect Jimmy's going to figure that out. And if right now Jimmy was balling like crazy, but Tyler was struggling, averaging 14 a game on 39% shooting. Is that what we would all rather have? No, everyone has to be firing on all cylinders at all moments, at all. It's unrealistic. So to me, the fact that the keys are being handed off, that's a good thing, because I expect Jimmy to figure it out. Whereas Tyler, it was much more of a question mark heading into this year. Well, am I crazy?
Yeah, go ahead, Brady.
I was going to say, to your point also, Ethan, about the Herro thing with the late game offense. If Herro's the key to the late game offense to kind of get Jimmy off in that way, he's also the key to dealing with length. Because as we talk about that Milwaukee game, we bring that up. They were one turnover, one maybe poor bad decision by Jimmy away from winning that game, because Tyler willed them to that point, even though Jimmy had one of his worst games of the season due to length. So I feel like even though Tyler is the definition of kind of pushing the late game stuff to the side, he's also could push that length stuff to the side if it comes down to it. That's just how good he's been. So it's I feel like if we hone in on Jimmy, I still feel like the late game's number one, but it feels like all of this stuff is just a supporting cast thing. Because as much as you mentioned, Jimmy missing games is a product of all these other guys stepping up. The three other things could be a product of these other guys stepping up, because we've seen it so far this season.
What we're going to talk about after the break is what is the Jimmy Butler that's necessary in the postseason for them to go to the finals, because the Jimmy Butler that was necessary 2 years ago was Jimmy playing at, pretty much peak level, although actually it happened more so in the finals than before that. So we're going to get into that. What is the baseline? If you're getting these leaps from Herro and Bam, what do you need from Jimmy to get there? And again, can we get away from what I think is somewhat of a myth that he needs to carry them? Because I don't think that's necessarily the case. All right. Before we get there, though, do want to tell you about a new sponsor of the show, although we have mentioned him a few times now. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click. NordVPN encrypts your internet traffic and hides your IP and virtual location. NordVPN helps protect you against bandwidth throttling from internet providers where ISPs slow down your internet. You don't want that to get you to upgrade. NordVPN allows you to switch your country IP address to access Netflix, Disney Plus, YouTube Premium, and other countries for cheaper prices. NordVPN offers unparalleled browsing security and protection from hacking of personal data. So check them out, nordvpn.com/5RSN, or just go to nordvpn.com and enter 5RSN. That's the number 5. Again, our promo code, and you get a discount on your NordVPN plan, 1 additional month for free, and a bonus gift at checkout. All of this completely risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. So check them out, nordvpn.com/5RSN, or use the promo code 5RSN and start saving with the world's leading VPN provider. If we go back now, I'm going to scroll back here to the playoffs, okay? And again, some myths that Jimmy Butler's played a ton of playoff minutes over the course of his career. He really hasn't. A lot of those Chicago series he was in didn't last very long. He's been to one finals at this stage. This is one of the reasons I've talked about his minutes not really being what people think. He's played 3,000 career minutes in the playoffs over 9 years. It averages out to about, 350 minutes per his seasons, which again is not that much. Okay. But if you go back and you look at his overall, okay, and he's had some really strong series, okay, and he's had some series that we saw last year, not so great. But if you go back overall to what he produced, I'm just trying to find it as I scroll here. I know it's here somewhere. A couple of years ago, I'm sorry, Basketball Reference doesn't do it that way anymore. All right. But if you look back against Indiana, this was in 2020. He averaged, this was, the Warren series. Warren didn't play, 19.8 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Okay. The next series, which was against Milwaukee, he played well against the Bucks that year, 23 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Against Boston, people don't remember this. He didn't really score that much. He shot the ball 43% clip and averaged 19 with 6 rebounds and 5 assists. But it was against the Lakers, of course. He played 43 minutes a game, didn't have Bam for most of it, didn't have Dragic. And he averaged 26, 8, and 10. Then last year, of course, he was outscored by Bryn Forbes, as people talk about, not stupidly locked in, 14.5 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists as the Heat got swept. When you look at those series, you would say off the cuff that like the Lakers series is the outlier. Okay. Right. I mean, he did things that he's never really done over that kind of a sustained stretch. You look at his best series previous to that. He actually did play well against Milwaukee. I guess he played better against them in the playoffs before. 2015 with Chicago, he averaged 25. And then he had a big series with Philadelphia against Toronto in the Eastern Conference Finals where he averaged 22, 7, and 6. Okay. So that's kind of his norm. The Lakers series is more than we ever anticipated, right, Greg? So, I mean, I think people thinking that's playoff Jimmy. I mean, very few players have played at that level in history.
Yeah, no, you hit on it. And here's where we are with this. Everyone needs to take a deep breath in through their nose and out through their mouth, concentrate on their breathing, and realize that Jimmy Butler is not prime Dwayne Wade. It's just, and I just think that there's an expectation level that we need finals Jimmy throughout a playoff run. And that's just not what I think is necessary. I think that if we're talking about a baseline for Jimmy Butler, as you kind of alluded to, as you started the segment, it's what he's averaging this year. And shout out to Jeff Nicholas for this tweet. He said the complete list of players averaging 21, 6, and 5 on 58% true shooting. There's 6 names, and Jimmy Butler is one of them in the entire league. That's what I think he about needs to be at, 26 and 5 on about 58% true shooting. Like, so he needs to basically play average to his averages essentially throughout the year. If he does that, I'm expecting other guys to step up. They're going to probably end the season with 3 guys close to 20 points per game. Tyler is now at the 21 point per game mark. They haven't had 2 21 point per game scores since CB and Dwayne were here after LeBron left. So like, I just don't subscribe to the belief that he needs to go finals Jimmy for this team to succeed. And that's, again, good news.
You would think so. I didn't think they would have a 20, although I thought Tyler would lead them in scoring. I didn't think they'd have a 20-point scorer this year. It looks like they're just going to crawl over that line with 2 of their guys. But Brady, like, again, there is a middle ground between Bryn Forbes Jimmy and LeBron James Jimmy, which is what we saw, in his last 2 playoff series that we've seen him play.
And funny enough, averaging out, that entire bubble run that like is looked at as Jimmy Butler. You were just going through some of the stats. I was looking at some stuff right now where this season he's shooting 42% on mid-range pull-ups on 3.7 attempts. In the bubble, it was on 42% shooting on 4 attempts. So basically the exact same. Looking at less than 10 feet from the basket, it's 8.6 attempts on 55% shooting. In the bubble, it was 7.8 attempts on 55% shooting. It's the exact same numbers. And we're talking about Jimmy Butler playing kind of poorly, but it's just we're looking at it under a microscope. Like, obviously, this is a Miami Heat podcast. We're looking at things weekly, daily, that we're going to discuss this, but this is a very recent thing. Like, we were talking about a couple months ago, like Jimmy Butler could be on MVP rankings. I've seen even recently, up to 2 weeks ago, Jimmy Butler was in top 10s of MVP tracking at times on some of these websites that I feel like there's some perspective there that's needed. I'm not as worried about stats, and I'll say this kind of to end it right here is that to me, it's more about like minutes and lineups to me. Like I sit in a lot of these games and I'll tell you, Ethan, or I'll tell Alex, like there's one specific mesh of guys, like when they put Jimmy, PJ, and Dedmon on the floor together, you're not maximizing your best player. Like it just is what it is. And I was looking at some of those numbers. I think over the last 15 games when they run that lineup of those three together, they have like a 107 offensive rating and a 109 defensive rating. Like that lineup is just not great. The shift that we saw last night with PJ and Markieff, now that's something that I think can really maximize Jimmy. Like there's ways that I think they can go about this. I think there's specific matchups, not to get off topic, that Markieff is their backup big. And I think if we're talking about finding ways to maximize your best player, not only offensively, but also defensively, like these are the type of lineups that do it. That it's not more about the raw numbers to me, because as I just said, like there's so many ways you can look at it that are so similar to that incredible bubble run. But it's just also, it's more about the surrounding cast. Like you're talking about Tyler, maybe matching Goran in that way. You know, we know Bam's at a much greater level. Kyle, you're obviously adding in that doesn't really match anything on that bubble team. It's just more about providing him in different situations that I feel like when you look back at that bubble team, there weren't many lineups that you looked at that kind of hurt Jimmy. Like if we think back, they would stretch the lineups down and it was a lot of Jay Crowder with Bam and then obviously a lot of shooting all over that. There was a lot of defensive issues, but they still had a ton of shooting and spacing for Jimmy to do what he does. That I still feel like that's kind of more important than anything else. And also last stat I was looking at was he's still top 7 in free throw attempts when he's driving. Like he's like still like middle of the pack among top players with drives. But we've seen, I mentioned before, how Kyle is kind of last among 89 players in field goal attempts. He's still top 7 in free throw attempts. That he's still that same Jimmy Butler that when he's getting in these type of driving modes, and he's not spamming the post ups, he's still able to do Jimmy Butler things. It's just maybe a 2 for 9 night or a bad night against Milwaukee will kind of put a sore, thumb on some things. But generally, I don't want to go too negative on this because there's just too many. I just feel like it's just too tight of windows to kind of point out.
I'm going to ask you guys a tough question after this, and I'm not going to tease it. So hold on. Okay. Cause you both have said something here on the podcast and that we have taken for granted. I want to know if it's changed. Before we do, I'll tell you about another great local sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at All Pro Construction Builders. If you're a South Florida resident, you know hurricane season is always around the corner. So you got to protect your home or business. Make sure to contact All Pro Construction Builders. Reach out to Danny. Okay. You do not want to deal with a whole bureaucracy or anything. Reach out directly to the owner. Okay. Reach out to Danny at 305-484-4429, 305-484-4429. They service Dade, they service Monroe. And yes, they also service Broward. Okay. I know everybody thinks we have a Broward bias. They do service Broward. And okay, they use only locally made products, American made. They're family owned and operated. You will only, like I said, deal with the owner from start to finish. They offer competitive pricing, but also quality service. So contact them for a free estimate. And if you mention 5 Reasons Sports or 5 Reasons or 5R or 5RSN, whatever the hell you want, you'll get a 10% discount. Okay. So reach out to Danny, 305-484-4429. And also check them out on Instagram at All Pro Construction Builders. The website is going to be up there soon. All right. You both said this here on the podcast, and I'm just curious because I think this frames the discussion because, okay, you're watching Kevin Durant go for 50 and then the next night Kyrie Irving goes for 60. You're watching, what Joel Embiid has done this season, what Nikola Jokic, what Luka Doncic. I mean, these are considered to be true number ones, right? The best player on their team. They compete for best player in the world, Giannis, etc. If LeBron wasn't playing with like the little sisters of the poor, then he would be in this conversation as well, right? Well, actually they're the old sisters of the rich, but should no longer be rich. But you both said this: your best player has to do that. You got to get your best player out there with this guy. Your best player is there still a consensus here? Is it a clear demarcation? Jimmy Butler is still the best player on the Miami Heat. Greg.
Yes, but I have an inclination to say that by the end of this playoff run, we may be pointing in another direction. And again, it's going to be delivering good news.
Brady, which of the two guys is he talking about? It's an interesting conversation because I think we would have just said 1, but I mean, guys averaging 25 on 51-41 splits since the All-Star break for 51-40 or 47 splits, something crazy like that. But Brady, I'll get to the first question. Is he still the best player on the Miami Heat? Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, he's the best player on the Miami Heat. I don't think he's the best scorer, and I don't think he's the best defender, but he's the best complete player on the Miami Heat. Like, that's when you're asking that question, that's a good sign that you're asking which player Greg is referring to, because it could be multiple, because there could be 2 different ones. And I think that's why it's a good thing here that there's different players around him. But yeah, he's the best player on the Miami Heat. Don't forget about the shooting, forget about all the things that worry about it. When it comes down to it, I still believe so.
And here's what I think. I think he still is. I think he still is as a complete player. I think this team still draws their energy from Jimmy Butler. I think they take their attitude comes from Jimmy Butler. It doesn't come from Bam. And it may start to come from Tyler someday. I think he's got the potential for that. I think his scoring bursts and the way he acts during them create some of that energy. But this team is a Jimmy Butler production. Okay. It is Kyle Lowry, PJ Tucker, even Markieff Morris. These are Jimmy Butler type guys. Okay. But I will say this, and this is why this discussion, the late game stuff I've talked about, I'm concerned about it. The struggles against a team like Milwaukee and their length, I'm concerned about it. Okay. The shooting, he's worked around that before. They can work around it again. He's smart enough to do it. There were things Dwayne couldn't do late in his career either. He worked around them. Okay. But here's the thing. Forget Lakers, Jimmy. You're not getting that again. Okay. That was a unique circumstance. It was driven by emotion, the bubble, his coffee debut, all of the rest of that stuff. Okay. It was driven by that. All right. And not having Dragic and playing for his guys, and then not having Bam and me against the world and competing with LeBron. You're not getting that Jimmy Butler again. Put it aside. It is not happening. Okay. But I do think you can get what Jimmy Butler averaged in that postseason overall. Okay. And if you can get that, he didn't have guys like he has now. Okay. This Tyler Herro, it drives me insane when analysts talk about he's back to Bubble Herro. He is twice the player of Bubble Herro at this stage. Okay. Bam. Okay. With him also, he is a far better player. Still some frustrations. Okay. No question. Still there more that he could be doing on a consistent basis offensively. 3-point, taking 1-3 a game. That hasn't happened. I think he's taken 1 the whole year. If he's taken 1, I thought it was 1. Okay. But he's got better players around him. And even Kyle Lowry, okay, I know they don't have what that Dragic was, but even Kyle Lowry refusing to shoot organizes their offense better than anybody they had at that time. And PJ Tucker, once he gets some rest, to me is an upgrade over Crowder. And they didn't have a Max Strus then, okay, who could create, or Gabe Vincent or some of these other guys they have. They just need to get the Jimmy on average from that postseason. And I do think he's still capable of that. And that's why I don't think this is a huge concern. To me, the thing going forward is in a year or two, he's missing time now. The ankle is a consistent problem. The wrist doesn't appear as totally healed. And he's going to miss more time. Like this is not like the most games he's going to miss with the Heat. I don't think he's going to play 60 for the Heat ever again. Okay. And
I think he's missed 25% of the games he's played since he came to Miami.
Yeah. And I think people are going to get frustrated with that contract as we go forward. But I think for right now, this season, if they get Jimmy from 2 years ago on average in the postseason, which I do believe they can get, they have enough. Okay. That's the way that I view this. Okay. So I think, again, it's a more nuanced conversation that's happening on Twitter. We needed to have it. We appreciate Greg and Brady here. Also nordvpn.com/5RSN, therapistpreferred.com, 5RSN, getsalas.com, 5RSN, all pro construction builders, 5RSN, 5 reasons, whatever the hell you want to do, get your home protected. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.